My boss fired me unfairly, so I took over the company and became her new boss. Have you ever been so wronged that it completely changed your life? Well, that's exactly what happened to me. My boss fired me out of nowhere. No warning, no explanation. But instead of letting her ruin my life, I decided to turn the tables. Not only did I take over the company, but I became her boss. Yeah, I know it sounds crazy, but trust me, it gets wild. Stick around, because this story has everything: betrayal, karma, and a plot twist that even I didn't see coming. Part 1. The beginning of the end. I'd been working at this marketing agency, let's call it Bright Vision, for about 3 years. It wasn't my dream job, but it paid the bills, and I actually liked what I did. I was a project manager, juggling campaigns, deadlines, and clients who always wanted everything done yesterday. It was stressful, sure, but I was good at it. My boss, Karen, and yes, that's her real name, was the textbook definition of a micromanager. She loved to pop in unannounced, criticize my work, and take credit for my ideas. The funny thing was, she barely even understood half the projects I worked on. She just sat in her office scrolling through Instagram or playing Candy Crush while the rest of us ran ourselves ragged. I didn't think much of her at first. She was annoying, but that was just the price of working in corporate America, right? But then, little things started to happen. Like when she forgot to approve my vacation request and then blamed me for not reminding her. Or when she told the CEO my idea for a campaign and acted like she'd come up with it herself. I brushed it off, though. I was good at my job, my team liked me, and the clients loved the results. I figured, as long as I stayed in my lane and kept my head down, I'd be fine. Then came the day. I walked into work like usual, coffee in hand, ready to tackle another chaotic week. But when I sat down at my desk, Karen was standing there with a folder in her hand and this smug look on her face. "Can I see you in my office for a moment?" she said, all fake sweet like she was about to offer me a cookie. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe she wanted to talk about a client or brainstorm a new campaign. But the second I sat down in her office, I knew something was off. She didn't waste any time. "We're letting you go," she said, her voice as cold as the coffee I'd left on my desk. My stomach dropped. "What? Why?" Karen just shrugged. "It's not working out." No explanation, no warning. Just gone. It wasn't until later that I found out the real reason why. And trust me, that's when things started to get really interesting. Part 2. The truth comes out. At first, I was in shock. I mean, I'd been busting my ass for that company, pulling late nights, covering for team members, even stepping in to fix Karen's mistakes. And now I was out? Just like that? After the initial wave of disbelief came the anger. I marched back to my desk to pack up my things, but not before making a few pointed remarks to Karen. "This is a mistake," I said, glaring at her. "You'll see." She didn't even flinch, just stood there with that smug little smile, like she'd already won. By the time I got home, my emotions were all over the place. I tried calling a few coworkers to see if they knew what had happened, but no one picked up. It was like I'd been ghosted by the entire office. Then, out of the blue, my phone buzzed. It was a text from a colleague, Emily, who I'd worked with on a bunch of campaigns. She was one of the few people at Bright Vision I actually trusted. "Hey," her message read. "I just heard what happened. I'm so sorry." Karen's a snake. A snake? I called her immediately, and she spilled everything. Apparently, Karen had been gunning for me for months. She saw me as a threat. According to Emily, Karen was worried I was too good at my job and might outshine her in front of the higher-ups. But the real kicker? Karen had been secretly setting me up to fail. She'd been tweaking my reports before sending them to clients, making it look like I'd missed key details. She'd even reassigned one of my projects to another team without telling me, then blamed me when it didn't get done on time. "She wanted you gone," Emily said. "She's been talking about it for weeks. I think she's scared you'll take her job." I couldn't believe it. I'd spent 3 years breaking my back for that company, and this was how it ended, because of some petty office politics. At that moment, something in me snapped. I wasn't going to let Karen get away with this. If she thought I was a threat before, she had no idea what was coming. Part 3. The plan. I spent the next couple of days in a haze of frustration and plotting. At first, I thought about blasting Karen on social media or leaving scathing reviews about Bright Vision online. but I quickly realized that wasn't going to do anything except make me look unprofessional. Then it hit me. If Karen wanted me gone because I was a threat, maybe she was right to be scared. Why not turn that fear into reality? But where would I even start? It wasn't like I could just waltz back into Bright Vision and take over, so I began to dig. I scoured LinkedIn, checked company reviews, and reached out to people I knew in the industry. Turns out, Bright Vision wasn't doing as great as Karen liked to pretend. They'd lost a few big clients recently, and their reputation wasn't what it used to be. A lot of former employees had left scathing reviews about the toxic work environment, most of them mentioning Karen by name. The more I read, the more I realized something. Bright Vision was vulnerable, and if I played my cards right, I could use that to my advantage. I started by reaching out to some of the smaller clients I'd worked with. Since I'd been the one managing their campaigns, I had a good relationship with most of them. I didn't badmouth the company or anything. I just let them know I was available for freelance work. To my surprise, a few of them jumped at the chance to work with me directly. They'd been unhappy with how things were being handled after I left, and they trusted me to get things done. By the end of the month, I had a handful of solid clients and a steady stream of income. It wasn't enough to make me rich, but it was a start. More importantly, it gave me confidence. If I could build this on my own, who's to say I couldn't go even further? That's when the real plan started to take shape. I wasn't just going to freelance. I was going to build something bigger, a business that could go toe-to-toe with Bright Vision and show Karen exactly what she had lost. Part 4. Building from the ground up. Starting my own business was terrifying. I had no idea where to begin, but I knew I couldn't do it alone. So I started making calls, friends, former coworkers, even college acquaintances who'd gone into marketing. I wasn't just looking for help. I wanted people who believed in what I was trying to build. To my surprise, a few people jumped on board almost immediately. Emily, the coworker who tipped me off about Karen's schemes, was the first to say yes. She'd been miserable at Bright Vision and was itching for a fresh start. Then there was Mike, a designer I'd worked with on some campaigns. He was insanely talented, but had always been underappreciated at Bright Vision. When I told him about my plans, he didn't even hesitate. "I'm in," he said. "Let's make something better." With a small but passionate team, we got to work. We didn't have an office, just my tiny apartment and a bunch of Google Docs. We spent countless nights brainstorming names, branding, and strategies. After what felt like 100 bad ideas, we finally landed on one that felt right: Next Wave Marketing. Our pitch was simple. We were a boutique agency that cared about our clients. No corporate BS, no middle management slowing things down, just great work and real results. The next challenge was finding more clients. I went back to my list of contacts and started reaching out, one by one. It was a grind, but slowly things started to pick up. Word spread that I was back in the game, and a few of Bright Vision's smaller clients made the switch to Next Wave. I knew we weren't even close to competing with Bright Vision yet, but it was a start. And as we started landing more clients, I could feel the momentum building. Of course, not everything was smooth sailing. We hit plenty of roadblocks, tight budgets, sleepless nights, and one particularly bad client who tried to stiff us on payment. But every setback just made me more determined to succeed. What kept me going was the thought of Karen sitting in her cushy office, thinking she'd gotten rid of me for good. Little did she know, I was just getting started. Part 5. The first big break. We'd been running Next Wave for about 6 months when we landed our first big client. It was a local tech startup that was gaining traction in the industry, and they needed a full-blown marketing campaign to launch their new product. The stakes were high. If we nailed this, it could open doors to more opportunities and put us on the map. If we messed it up, though, well, let's just say failure wasn't an option. The project was intense. The startup wanted everything: branding, social media campaigns, a website overhaul, and even a launch event. It was way more work than our little team could handle, but instead of saying no, we said, let's do it. We pulled all-nighters, skipped weekends, and survived on a steady diet of takeout and caffeine. Emily handled the social media side, Mike worked his magic on the visuals, and I coordinated the whole thing while writing copy and pitching ideas to the client. By the time the launch rolled around, we were exhausted, but it was all worth it. The campaign was a massive success. The product sold out within weeks, and the startup's CEO was raving about how much they loved working with us. Word of our success spread fast. Suddenly, we were getting calls from other startups, mid-sized businesses, and even a couple of former Bright Vision clients who were curious about this new agency that was making waves. And then it happened. I got an email from one of Bright Vision's major clients, the kind that made up a significant chunk of their revenue. The subject line was simple: interested in switching agencies? I couldn't believe it. This was the kind of client Karen would bend over backward to keep, and now they were coming to me. I knew I had to play this smart. During our first meeting, they mentioned that they weren't happy with the service they'd been getting from Bright Vision. Campaigns were late, the quality had dropped, and their account manager wasn't responding to emails. Sounded like Karen's leadership was finally catching up with her. After a few weeks of back-and-forth negotiations, we signed them as a client. It was the biggest contract NextWave had ever landed. And the moment I realized we were no longer the scrappy underdog, we were a real contender. And trust me, Karen was about to find out just how real. Part 6. The fallout begins. After we signed Bright Vision's major client, I knew it wouldn't take long for Karen to notice. Sure enough, a week later, I got a text from Emily that read, "Karen's losing it. She just called an emergency meeting about the lost account. Wish I could have recorded it." I could almost picture her pacing back and forth in the conference room, trying to explain to the higher-ups why one of their biggest clients had jumped ship. From what Emily told me, Karen tried to spin it as the client being unreasonable and impossible to work with. The problem with her story? Bright Vision had lost more than one client recently. Remember all those smaller accounts that came over to NextWave in the early days? Turns out they'd started complaining too. Delays, poor communication, lackluster results. It was all coming to light. Karen was scrambling to keep things under control, but the cracks were starting to show. And while I wasn't exactly cheering for her downfall, I wasn't going to lie. I felt a little vindicated. But things really escalated when one of Karen's bosses reached out to me. Yeah, you read that right. Her boss. I got a LinkedIn message from someone named Linda, a VP at Bright Vision. She said she'd heard great things about NextWave and wanted to discuss potential opportunities for collaboration. Collaboration? Yeah, right. I knew this wasn't about working together. Linda was fishing for information, trying to figure out how we'd manage to swoop in and take some of their best clients. I debated whether to even respond, but curiosity got the better of me. We set up a call, and I played it cool, just two professionals chatting about the industry. During the call, Linda asked a lot of pointed questions about how we operated, what made clients choose us, and whether we'd consider partnering with Bright Vision on future projects. I could tell she was digging for dirt on Karen without outright saying it. So I gave her just enough to keep her interested, mentioning that many of our clients valued communication, transparency, and hands-on involvement, areas where Bright Vision had clearly been slipping. Linda didn't say much, but I could tell she was taking notes. By the time we ended the call, I had a gut feeling that Karen's days were numbered. Part 7. Karen's downfall. A few weeks passed, and things at NextWave were busier than ever. We were onboarding new clients, hiring more staff, and finally moving out of my apartment into a small but proper office. Things were looking up. Then Emily texted me again, and this time her message was even juicier. "You won't believe this. Karen just got demoted. Linda's taking over her accounts." I almost spit out my coffee when I read that. Karen? The queen of micromanaging, the woman who'd fired me without a second thought. Demoted? I called Emily immediately. She filled me in on all the drama that had gone down. Apparently, Linda had started poking around Bright Vision, talking to clients and employees about what wasn't working. Unsurprisingly, Karen's name came up a lot. Clients complained about missed deadlines and poor service. Employees mentioned her toxic management style and the revolving door of people leaving under her watch. It didn't take long for Linda to connect the dots. Karen was pulled into a meeting with the higher-ups and essentially told she wasn't fit to handle her position anymore. They didn't fire her outright, probably because she'd been with the company for so long, but they stripped her of her accounts and her authority. "She's basically just a glorified admin now," Emily said, trying not to laugh. I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. This was karma at its finest. Karen had tried to ruin me, but in the end, she'd ruined herself. But the story didn't end there, because just when I thought things couldn't get crazier, I got another email, this time from Linda herself. Part 8. The offer. Linda's email was short and to the point. She wanted to set up a meeting to discuss a mutually beneficial opportunity. I didn't need to read between the lines to know what this was about. Bright Vision was struggling, and Linda saw Next Wave as their way out. I debated whether to even entertain the idea. On one hand, the thought of working with Bright Vision again made my skin crawl, but on the other hand, this was my chance to gain the ultimate upper hand. Curiosity got the better of me, so I agreed to meet. We set a date, and a week later, I found myself sitting across from Linda in a fancy downtown cafe. She was all business, polished, confident, and clearly used to getting her way. After some small talk, she got straight to it. "I've been watching what you've built with Next Wave," she said. "It's impressive." I thanked her, playing it cool, even though inside I was dying to hear where this was going. "We've had some challenges at Bright Vision lately," she continued, carefully choosing her words, "and I believe there's an opportunity for us to work together, perhaps even merge our teams." Merge? I almost laughed out loud. Here she was, the VP of a company that had fired me, now asking if I'd consider joining forces. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I didn't let my emotions show. Instead, I asked her what she had in mind. Linda laid it out. Bright Vision wanted to bring Next Wave under their umbrella. They'd keep our name and branding, but absorb us into their company structure. In return, I'd get a high-level position, something like Chief Strategy Officer, with a hefty salary and a stake in the company. It was a tempting offer, no doubt about it. But there was one glaring issue. "What about Karen?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Linda hesitated for a moment before answering. "Karen won't be involved in this arrangement. She's focusing on other areas of the company now." Translation: Karen had been benched. Still, I wasn't sure. Partnering with Bright Vision felt like selling out, and especially after everything Karen had put me through. But then, Linda said something that caught my attention. "We need someone who understands what clients want, someone who can fix what's broken. I believe that person is you." It wasn't just about the money or the title. It was about proving that I was the one who could do what Karen never could. I told Linda I'd think about it, but in the back of my mind, I was already planning my next move. Part 9. The Takeover. After my meeting with Linda, I couldn't stop thinking about her offer. Joining Bright Vision felt like a full-circle moment, but not in the way she probably imagined. It wasn't about the money or the title. It was about showing Karen and everyone else that I was the better leader. But I wasn't about to rush into anything. I needed to make sure this deal worked in my favor. So I called up my lawyer friend Jess and asked her to help me iron out the details. Together, we drafted a counteroffer that would give me more leverage. Here's what I proposed. Next Wave would stay independent but partner with Bright Vision on specific projects. I'd accept the role of Chief Strategy Officer, but only if I had full control over the marketing division. Oh, and one more thing, Karen had to report directly to me. When I sent the proposal to Linda, I expected some pushback, but to my surprise, she agreed almost immediately. It seemed Bright Vision was more desperate than I realized. A few weeks later, the deal was finalized, and I officially joined Bright Vision as the new Chief Strategy Officer. Walking into that office for the first time since Karen fired me felt surreal. Everything looked the same, but the power dynamics had shifted entirely. I wasted no time getting to work. I reviewed client accounts, reorganized teams, and started implementing the systems that had made Next Wave so successful. Employees who'd been demoralized under Karen's leadership suddenly had a renewed sense of purpose. And then, there was Karen herself. She avoided me at first, probably hoping we wouldn't cross paths. But eventually, she couldn't hide anymore. Our first meeting was awkward, to say the least. She walked into my office with a forced smile, clearly dreading whatever was about to happen. "Hi," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Congratulations on the new position." I didn't let her off the hook. "Thanks, Karen. I think it's time we had a chat about your role moving forward." The look on her face was priceless. She knew she had no power here anymore. To be honest, I didn't go out of my way to make her life miserable. That wasn't my style, but I also didn't make it easy for her. She had to report to me weekly, and I held her to the same high standards she'd never bothered to meet herself. Over time, it became clear that Karen wasn't cut out for the new Bright Vision. She started missing deadlines, clashing with teammates, and generally making herself a liability. A few months later, she decided to pursue other opportunities. Translation: she quit before I could fire her. When the email announcing her departure went out, I couldn't help but smile. The woman who'd tried to sabotage me was finally out of the picture. Part 10. Looking back, moving forward. With Karen gone, Bright Vision finally began to turn a corner. The changes I'd implemented were paying off. Clients were happier, employees were more engaged, and revenue was climbing. For the first time in years, the company felt alive again. As for Next Wave, I kept it running as an independent division within Bright Vision. It became a sort of elite squad for high-profile projects, and we attracted some of the most talented people in the industry. The team was thriving, and seeing it all come together was one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. One day, as I was reviewing reports in my office, Emily stopped by with a big grin on her face. "You know," she said, leaning against the doorframe, "it's kind of wild to think about where this all started. Fired by Karen, and now you're the boss of the whole thing." I laughed. "Yeah, it's been a journey, hasn't it? But as satisfying as it was to be on top, I couldn't shake the lessons I'd learned along the way. Getting fired had been one of the lowest points of my life, but it forced me to take risks and believe in myself in a way I never had before. If I'd stayed at Bright Vision under Karen's thumb, I might have never realized what I was capable of. I might have just kept grinding away, waiting for someone else to recognize my worth. Instead, I created something better, not just for me, but for the people who believed in me too. And that's what I'd say to anyone going through something similar. Don't let someone else's pettiness or insecurity define you. If someone's trying to hold you down, it's probably because they see your potential. Use that as fuel. Prove them wrong. Oh, and one last thing. When you do succeed, don't waste your energy on revenge. The best way to get back at someone like Karen isn't to drag them down. It's to rise so high they can't even see you anymore. Underscore, 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 underscore. So, that's my story. If you've ever had a boss like Karen, or if you've been in a tough spot and came out stronger, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. And hey, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. There's more coming, and you don't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and remember, your comeback story is just waiting to be written. See you next time.